The president's speech was at the Lake Orion GM assembly plant. Joining him was South Korean President Lee Myung-bak to speak on the benefits of the recent free trade agreements between the two nations. Joe Saputo, the news director at WXOU Radio at Oakland University, thought the arrival of a foreign dignitary was a big story for the area, even though Obama was the headliner at the plant.
I mean, I thought it was big news. It was exciting that he was actually coming with somebody important to a GM plant to explore trade, and I think the more trade we have with Asia, the better.
Also in attendance was Phil Berard, a line worker at the plant, who is also the general manager for WXOU. He was picked to sit in the seats right behind the podium, granting him a prime spot for national television cameras.
And I was one of the hand-picked people that they brought, and they marched us in first, and they put us down in that first row.
Berard knows that Obama's trip to the Lake Orion plant had less to do with Phil Berard and more to do with General Motors. GM received $50 billion in federal aid in 2009 in order to meet operating expenses and remain in business. Berard's job was one recovered by the bailout. He'd worked at the Pontiac GM plant and was laid off when the plant closed, only to be brought back at the reopening of the Lake Orion plant. The Orion Assembly Center itself had closed, but was reopened as the primary plant for the Chevy Sonic, the only subcompact vehicle built in America.
So a bunch of different plants bid out for this job to bring that small car project back. Lake Orion basically won the bid, and it's kind of a political move in a sense that, okay, we're bringing jobs back to Detroit, too. You know what I mean? So it helps being in Michigan, physically being here to say, okay, we're putting jobs back in Detroit. The bailout's working.
Kurt Gottfried is an adjunct lecturer with Oakland University's economics department. Gottfried recognizes that the significance of Obama's visit to the Orion Assembly Center showcases the entire purpose of the bailout. The workers at the plant, Berard included, all have jobs and are contributing to the economy because of the operation of this particular plant. Though Berard says he is employed because of the bailout, he hasn't always approved of the idea of an auto bailout.
I didn't like the idea of the bailout of the banks, so why should I then be hypocritical and say, well, I'm glad at least they're bailing out my company? You know what I mean? So initially, no, I was pretty opposed to the bailout at the time, because I think that it would be good, in a way, for these companies to fail, so that people would realize, hey, guess what? There's not going to always be someone there to get the slack when you decide to act inappropriately.
Still, Berard believes, in hindsight, that the bailout was a success. Not just because of the impact on General Motors, but because of the effects on all of the companies that do business with GM.
Companies that do third-party work for the auto industry, people that do work for those companies, and all of the management that's needed for those, and all of the infrastructure. And if the auto industry goes, then that all goes with it. I mean, how can you then support the welfare for all of the people that would need it, that don't have jobs anymore? How would you deal with the burgeoning population of homeless people and people that are now living below the poverty line? It's already bad enough.
Gottfried adds that the creation or salvation of jobs is critical to arguments for and against the bailout.
And if you think of those million jobs that have been saved, you can think of the incomes attached to each of those jobs, the incomes that pay mortgages, pay college tuition bills, that pay property taxes, that go out to restaurants. It's quite a compelling sort of an argument for bailouts.
Others, such as Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney, will say that they still believe that it was the wrong move. And though Berard's appearance on national television only creates a stir at his radio station and his auto plant, the fact that Barack Obama is able to speak in front of Berard and his coworkers at the Orion Assembly Center signifies that, at least for these workers, the $50 billion was well spent. In Rochester, Michigan, I'm Matt Pocket for the OU News Bureau.